Hello and welcome to the program UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about the 5 alien types. That's correct, the 5 alien types. Now, certainly there are more than just 5, but these are the top 5 that people often report seeing. I found this article over at mentalfloss.com, written by Eden Gordon, July 1st, 2026. It says the five types of aliens people most frequently say they see, from Greys to the Nordics. Aliens are among us, or at least a lot of people seem to think they might be. According to a 2026 poll from CBS, 1 in 5 Americans believe aliens have already visited our planet, and 17% of people think they've seen a UFO. 67% of people said they would feel curious upon meeting extraterrestrial beings, as opposed to scared or other emotions. So 67% of people say that they'd be curious to see them, and 31% of people say that they would be scared or other emotions. Well, I guess that depends on what kind of experience maybe that you've had. Slightly less common are those who claim to actually have seen or met aliens. These people do exist. In fact, as far as tales and rumors about alien encounters and abductions go, several specific types of aliens appear more commonly than others. These tales have gained some traction in recent years thanks to fresh disclosures. In 2026, scientist and former CIA-funded government researcher Dr. Hal Puthoff, and we've talked about Hal Puthoff a lot on this program. I mean, I think in his 90s now, definitely one of the OGs in the UFO field. Dr. Hal Puthoff claimed that people who have been involved in recoveries have said there are at least 4 separate types. His words recall claims by astrophysicist Dr. Eric Davis, another one we've talked about, who in 2025 said that 4 types of aliens, Greys, Nordics, insectoids, and reptilians, could be piloting UFOs. An important caveat here is that there is absolutely no reliable evidence to substantiate any of these tales. There are also all manner of logical explanations that could neatly account for the claims featured on the list. It's possible that all of these people are lying, dreaming, hallucinating, or simply confused. After all, people have mistaken everything from the moon to insects for UFOs, so why shouldn't the same apply to extraterrestrial encounters? Yet still, stories persist. These experiences may be outright lies, but for anyone who wants to believe, as the X-Files' Fox Mulder often says, even the tiny possibility that there might be certain specific types of aliens out there holds an undeniable kind of fascination. Well, especially as it's becoming more and more clear that UFOs are real, I mean, it's only natural that we're going to want to find out who's behind these things. Now, that list of 5 alien types says the Greys, the Nordics, tall whites, reptilians, and insectoids. I think you've probably heard of all these at some point, especially in some of these UFO abduction stories. It says if there's one type of alien that dominates discourse about extraterrestrial encounters, that would be the famous Greys. These beings are generally described as somewhat humanoid, with gray skin and usually large black eyes. They're typically said to be shorter than the average human, standing about 3 or 4 feet tall. Yeah, a lot of folks think that these things are some kind of almost like a robot or something. They seem to have no empathy or emotion. These creatures first gained notoriety thanks to the famous Barney and Betty Hill abduction story. Now, remember, this is clear back in the, late 50s, early 60s. The Hills were an American couple who claimed they were abducted while driving through rural New Hampshire in 1961. So you're looking at, 65 years? The couple said they initially had no recollection of the actual encounter, but through hypnosis sessions, they began to recall having been taken by gray beings who probed them with needles and other tools. This is something that we hear a lot about with these abduction stories, that people have repressed memories. And I mean, I could see why. It seems like some of the things that are done to them on these ships are not much fun at all. The so-called Greys were further popularized when they appeared on the cover of the 1987 book Communion by Whitley Strieber, which claimed to detail Strieber's fractured recollections of alien encounters. They remained staples of abduction narratives ever since. And then it goes on to the Nordics. It seems like these might have been more popular back in the 50s, but we still hear about them. People think that they've seen them. These extraterrestrials are typically described as white, tall, and very human in appearance. Usually blue-eyed and blonde, they are generally described as benevolent, eloquent, and even spiritual by those who claim to have seen them. They remain popular in New Age circles for their alleged messages from space and unity and are sometimes seen as higher beings. One popular story about an encounter with the Nordics was told by a forestry employee named Travis Walton, who claimed to have been taken aboard a spacecraft in 1975, where he said he met the Nordics and other extraterrestrials. They're human enough that you feel an immediate connection, Walton wrote of the experience, but there's something in their eyes, a depth and intensity that's clearly not ordinary. Skeptics have blamed Walton's experience on hoaxing, false memories, drugs, and other factors, but his tale remains one of the most famous alleged UFO encounters in history, and it also inspired the 1993 movie Fire in the Sky. Now, I do believe that he passed a polygraph test right after that. And then, I don't know, several years ago, there was a television show he was on where he didn't pass it. But I still have to think that this guy at least believes he's telling the truth. I mean, he did disappear for, several days there. And nobody knew where he was at. Tales of Nordic alien visitations have inspired all manner of analysis, with some connecting these beings to elves in Norse mythology and biblical angels, and others theorizing that they are shapeshifters who assume recognizable forms to gain human trust. The Nordics also bear a number of similarities to a few other reported alien races, including the Pleiadians. These beings are also usually said to be blonde-haired, blue-eyed humans, and some people claim they are also visiting Earth to help humanity evolve. Well, that leaves a lot of questions open in my mind. Both the Nordics and Pleiadians bear similarities to another race called the Venusians, and some alien believers claim that all three hail from the Pleiades star cluster. So I think you're getting into some of these older thoughts on these aliens being actual physical creatures, entities from another solar system, another galaxy, whatever, as opposed to being just simply interdimensional, which is the idea that I think is really beginning to take root. Polish-American ufologist George Adamski was among the earliest to report encountering one of the so-called Venusians. Adamski, who was also the founder of the Royal Order of Tibet, a neo-theosophical organization based in Laguna Beach, California, claimed to have seen a small spacecraft descend to Earth. He reported that the ship was carrying a man with tan skin and wavy hair who communicated with him telepathically, and noted that the man claimed to have come from the planet Venus. Of course, we know that planet Venus today is quite hot, so I'm not sure how you would live there. I believe when the Russians landed the probe of their spacecraft there that it melted in no time at all. Then it goes on and talks about the tall whites. Tall white aliens are said to stand over 6 feet tall, but they resemble the grays more than the humans, with pale white skin, bald heads, and light blue or green eyes. The most famous story about the tall whites was told by a man named Charles Hall, who claimed to have lived with them for 2 years in Nevada in the 1960s. Hall later wrote about his alleged alien encounters in the book Millennial Hospitality, which was later adapted into a documentary called Walking with the Tall Whites. According to Hall, these aliens were reserved and slightly unpredictable, though not hostile, and appeared to be interested in observing and learning about humans. Well, I guess observing and learning is one thing, controlling and enslaving would be another. Then we have the reptilians. Now, these are some nasty looking things, if I have to say so myself. Reptilians are legendary creatures said to be humanoid that stand upright but have reptile-like skin. According to popular lore, these creatures may be shapeshifters that walk among humanity. Unlike the other species on this list, these creatures are said to be overtly malicious with ill intentions for humanity. Now, there are a lot of memes out there about lizard people, but man, I tell you, sometimes you have to wonder, don't you? Reptilians are frequently the subject of various conspiracy theories, though there aren't too many eyewitness claims of encounters with these creatures. They have, however, been compared to mythological dragons and other serpentine and crocodile-headed beings. Well, we go all the way back to Adam and Eve and the serpent in the garden there. It has to make you wonder. And then there are the insectoids. Insectoids are supposedly extraterrestrials who look a bit like praying mantises. If praying mantises could stand and were about 6 to 9 feet tall, these creatures were relatively rare in UFO narratives, but understandably are said to be quite terrifying, though some claim they are not overly malicious and instead want to educate humans. A lot of the accounts that I have read, people being probed by these insectoid aliens have not been that nice. They are sometimes said to wear robes and jewels as well. References to human-insect hybrids also appear in science fiction, folklore, and mythology, such as the famed Mothman of West Virginia. Rumors of a so-called Manus Man have also been popping up along the Musconetcong River in New Jersey in recent years, and we've talked about the Manus Man here, I think, a couple times. Of course, tales of cryptids are nothing new, but the idea that they might be extraterrestrials certainly puts an interesting new spin on things. Well, I'm one of these people that happens to believe that the world of cryptids and the world of aliens overlaps. I really think that Bigfoot is, there's some connection there with these alien entities, just because of the way the tracks appear and disappear, and how it seems people often describe it as being human-like, but it doesn't have that life in their eyes. Maybe they're kind of a servant species, much like the Greys to these things. I want to go a little further into some of the summaries on these 5 different types of aliens, personal experiences that people have had with them. The first one, looking at the gray aliens, they seem to be the most talked about. AI tells us the most famous and defining case of a gray alien human abduction is in the 1961 encounter of Betty and Barney Hill in New Hampshire. Their story popularized the archetype of short, gray-skinned humanoids with large bald heads and immense almond-shaped black eyes. The 1961 encounter. On the night of September 19, 1961, the couple was driving through the White Mountains of New Hampshire when they spotted a bizarre, glowing craft in the sky. According to their accounts, Barney stopped the car, approached the object, and saw humanoid figures through the windows. After a strange beeping sound, they lost consciousness and awoke 2 hours later, confused, missing time, and discovering unexplained physical anomalies such as torn clothing, broken binocular straps, and stopped watches. Initially, the couple had only fragmentary memories and sought the help of a psychiatrist. Through regressive hypnosis, both Barney and Betty recall being taken aboard the craft. Inside, they describe being separated, subjected to physical examinations such as skin and eye samples being taken, and communicating with the alien beings telepathically. This narrative heavily influenced subsequent alien abduction accounts, many of which also feature these themes of lost time and physical probing. Mainstream scientists and psychologists view alien abduction claims, including the Hill case, as lacking physical verifiable evidence. The skeptical investigators attribute the detailed recollections during regressive hypnosis to memory recovery techniques that can inadvertently create false memories or incorporate pre-existing cultural myths. Common alternative explanations for these phenomena include sleep paralysis, vivid dreaming, dissociation, and the psychological impact of profound stress. Well, they definitely have an impact on people, and you can imagine how stressful it would be to be taken aboard one of these craft against your will. We have multiple cases of human contact being reported with the Nordic aliens. Now, AI tells us that Nordic aliens are a purported extraterrestrial race described as tall, 6 to 7 foot humanoids with stereotypical Scandinavian features, blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. You have to wonder, are these hybrids or are they just assuming the shape to try to fit in? In ufology, they are often linked to the Pleiades star cluster, or Pleiadians, and are typically portrayed as benevolent guides sharing messages of peace and spiritual awareness. Well, they still haven't given us a cure to cancer. The concept of the Nordic alien originated during the 1950s contactee movement. George Adamski, 1952, perhaps the most famous contactee. Adamski claimed to have met a friendly, long-haired Nordic-like visitor in the California desert who hailed from Venus and communicated telepathic warnings about nuclear weapons. We know now that Venus is really too hot. I mean, it's a molten planet, basically, so there's no way it could support any kind of carbon-based life, but you just wonder, maybe George lost something in the translation there. Elizabeth Clare, 1950s, a South African ufologist who claimed to have extensive contact and a relationship with an extraterrestrial named Akan, later detailing her experiences in the book Beyond the Light Barrier. Now, sometimes people really get caught up in this stuff, and I suppose if it was true, you would. Billy Meyer, 1976, a Swiss farmer who claimed ongoing telepathic contact with a female extraterrestrial named Samjesi from Pleiades, advocating for environmentalism and spiritual growth. Seems to be a common theme, and of course this is 1975. I guess that whole environmental movement's starting to move, but like I said, I guess lofty goals, but where's the cure for cancer? Really wild stuff. These accounts rely on the contactee narrative where humans claim they were willingly invited onto a spacecraft, talking about the abductions, or asked to share messages with humanity, as opposed to the non-consensual abduction narratives associated with gray aliens. So you can kind of see a difference here, where the grays are just straight up abducting people, oftentimes in their sleep or driving down the highway like Betty and Barney were, whereas these Nordics seem to be reaching out, kind of, in person-to-person contact at least. However, skeptics, mainstream scientists, and ufologists regard these cases as pseudoscientific, while proponents, including figures like physicist Dr. Eric Davis, have claimed in intelligence circles that Nordics are among the biological species recovered from UFO crash. There is no corroborated empirical evidence for these encounters. The stories are generally attributed to hoaxes, the psychological impact of the Cold War, and the atomic age. Yeah, Eric Davis, I mean, he's been around for a while too. Man, if these guys are just making this stuff up, some of these guys who are actually, certified scientists, why would you throw your career like that away? I don't get that part. Now, regarding the tall whites, it tells us the tall whites are a purported extraterrestrial race popularized by former U.S. military weather observer Charles James Hall. He claimed to have interacted with them in the 1960s while stationed near the Indian Spring and Nellis Air Force Base ranges in Nevada. According to Hall's Millennial Hospitality book series, the tall whites are a humanoid extraterrestrial species with chalk-white, paper-thin skin. They are described as standing between 6 and 9 feet tall, possessing large, glowing blue eyes that can turn pink with age, and communicating via a high-pitched, melodic voice. Hall alleged that the U.S. Air Force had a secret, long-standing agreement to cooperate with them. He claimed the aliens maintained underground bases and advanced hangars in the Nevada mountains. Hall's story focuses on his initial intense fear, which gradually developed into an amicable rapport with a female entity he referred to as the teacher. These descriptions fall under the broader umbrella of Nordic aliens, which are often tied to Pleiadian contact lore. Hall's experiences have since been adapted into books, a documentary on Apple TV, and an IMDb feature. Yeah, it seems a little bit more limited as far as what people are reporting. Regarding the reptilian aliens, it says reptilian alien human contact is a concept primarily rooted in ufology, science fiction, and conspiracy theories. I gotta get the conspiracy theory in, don't we? Proponents suggest that reptilian humanoids, sometimes called reptoids or Draco, interact with humanity through genetic manipulation, secret shadow governments, and underground bases. The modern lizard people conspiracy theory was popularized in the 1990s by British conspiracy theorist David Icke. Icke claimed that these beings shapeshift into human form, infiltrating human societies and gaining positions of political and financial power to manipulate global events. The concept itself was heavily influenced by 1980s pop culture, such as the science fiction television series V, which featured shape-shifting extraterrestrials disguised as humans. Beliefs regarding serpent-like beings and contact with star-traveling entities are often tied to ancient mythologies. Theorists often reference the Anunnaki from Sumerian texts claiming that these deities were extraterrestrial race that genetically manipulated humans. I actually think that's kind of been debunked. If you can, there's some good material out there. You can watch it, the correct translation of the Sumerian text. Although, I mean, there's plenty of lore in ancient society revolving around reptilian gods, or what we would call aliens today. So, but I just think that's kind of a rabbit trail. Crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. Well, traditional theories posit that these reptilian beings hail from star systems like Alpha Draconis. Some modern speculation considers them crypto-terrestrials. In 2024, researchers from Harvard University and Montana Technological University published a speculative paper exploring the possibility that a technologically advanced hidden population, perhaps living underground or on the moon, could be secretly walking among humans on Earth. It would seem that way sometimes when you think about all the terraforming going on, from spraying our clouds to trying to kill all the mosquitoes, a foundation prey species, even though it's an annoying insect. In popular internet folklore and ufology, supposed contact scenarios often involve telepathic communication, abductions, and encounters in underground bases, supposedly connected by massive transit systems. That's another one that's been around for a long time. And you kind of wonder, you hear about these boom sounds people can't find. I mean, I have questions. Now, finishing up here with these insectoid aliens, it tells us in ufology and pop cultures, insectoid alien human contact describes accounts of humans encountering giant praying mantis-like entities. These encounters, such as the widely documented 1957 sighting, typically involve telepathic communication, clinical medical examinations, and shared operations with other alien species. These things have been around for a while. Theories and details surrounding these highly traumatic encounters include: 1. Mantis characteristics. Witnesses often describe these beings as being six-toed or six-limbed entities standing over 6 to 10 feet tall with large wraparound eyes and stick-like limbs. Nobody I'd want to meet. The abduction narrative. According to purported abduction research, human contact with insectoids typically involves capture, physiological examinations, and missing time. And some of those physiological examinations seem to be pretty nasty. Alien researchers. Abduction researchers claim that insectoids operate in a supervisory capacity, frequently working alongside greys to conduct medical procedures or simulations. We do hear that in a lot of these accounts. While some reports frame insectoid interactions as peaceful, researchers have documented that these encounters can be highly stressful and terrifying for the abductees. If something snatches you out of your bed, immobilizes you, lays you on an examination table, and then does whatever they feel like doing to you, even if they return you, that doesn't seem peaceful to me at all. Yeah, very, very strange stuff going on there. I guess it's good that we can talk about this stuff, though, and kind of bring some of these terms and ideas to forefront, because we'll often come across these different types of aliens or these different UFO experts talking about this story, and I think it's important to know who the players are. Helps us understand the big picture. Hey, if you like the program, don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe. Doesn't cost a dime. Until next time, this is UFO Warning. Over and out.